Today I'll be explaining all the different sections, parts, components, types, styles, and inner electronics of a lightsaber. Not the canon lightsaber, I'm talking real life that people actually have and that they use for display or cosplay or dueling. Hello there and welcome. This is Star Wars in real life, where we do the Star Wars instead of actually important things like moving into a brand new condo and never receiving your mailbox key. What fun! This video is part of a series of videos made to help you build your very own lightsaber, because the information that's out there on the web right now is just no thank you. And look into my Lightsaber Academy tier on Patreon for more in-depth lightsaber building videos. For example, by the time I'm done with this will probably be like 7, 8, 9 minutes long on YouTube, but the original, probably 20 to 25 minutes. Patreon. So a real life lightsaber is made up of two parts, the hilt and the blade. And that's it. End of video. Bob's your uncle. Just kidding. In this video, we're only going to cover lightsaber hilt. The hilt is just a shell, and that shell is composed of several different sections. From top to bottom, we've got the emitter, the switch, the body, and lastly, the pommel. So let's talk about the emitter first. The emitter is where the lightsaber blade comes out of. Two things you should know about emitters are the neck type and the diameter of the opening. This lightsaber has a pretty standard width emitter, but this one is what's called a thin neck lightsaber. One thing you should keep in mind is that thin necks have a greater risk of snapping if you're doing some heavy contact dueling, so be careful. The other thing is regarding the diameter of the opening. Most lightsabers, like this one, has a 1-inch inner diameter. That means there's exactly 1 inch of space from the inside of the wall to the other side. The other diameter, which is slightly less common, is 7/8 inch diameter, which results in a noticeably thinner blade. Because of that, these are sometimes referred to as thin blade lightsabers. So before you buy your blade, make sure you know the exact exterior diameter of your blade and the exact inner diameter of your emitter, or else it's not going to fit. The switch is where you turn on your lightsaber, and the button is called the activation switch, and they come in a ton of different styles. This one, for instance, has a circular, simple push button activation switch. Another common type of activation switch is this circuit board looking thing. These are called switch boxes. So they're basically just different terms for the same piece of hardware, just different styles. The next section is known as the body, or the handle, or the sleeve. This is where you place your hands. It could be flat and smooth, or have ridges, or be really ergonomically shaped for your hands. And lastly, we have the pommel all the way at the bottom, which is basically just like a bottle cap, and it exposes the interior components of your lightsaber. Pretty much every lightsaber has, at the very least, these 5 things inside. A soundboard to control all the sounds and lighting effects, an activation switch to power on and off your lightsaber, a speaker for those sounds to play through, a battery to power all those things I just mentioned, and lastly, a chassis to hold all those things I just mentioned, including the battery. And then, of course, all of the wires to connect everything with. So I'm not going to talk too much about soundboards because I already did an entire video explaining what these are and what the best ones in the world are, and you can find that video right up here. But in summary, soundboards are basically the motherboard that controls all of your lightsaber's sound and lighting effects. Switches. Obviously, you're going to want a nice, convenient button to power your lightsaber on and off with. And they come in many different forms on the outside, but on the inside, they're actually much smaller. For example, this is my activation switch that I'm going to be installing on this lightsaber right here. And this type of switch in particular is called a latching switch. And that's not a lightsaber term, that's an industry term for any sort of switch that turns on and stays on until you turn it off again. The other type of switch you should know about is called a momentary switch, and that only stays on for as long as you press it down for. Momentary switch. I actually have another latching switch right here. It's this little red lever that moves back and forth like this. Right now it's not connected to anything, but I have a very special custom designed piece right here that's going to go inside, and it's going to make it possible to use this as an actual switch. And this is definitely more of an optional add-on because I already have my activation switch that I'm going to put on the back here right there. So why would I need another switch? Because in the show, this lightsaber isn't just a lightsaber, it's also a gun. It fires plasma bursts out of here, but it can only do one at a time. The way you switch back and forth is with this. Moving on to speakers. Lightsaber speakers are really small, low power speakers. That's all that can really fit inside of a lightsaber. They can vary by diameter, brand, voltage, sound quality. Don't expect any of them to compete with like your Sonos speaker. It is what it is. So if you're shopping for your own lightsaber speaker, just make sure that the outer diameter of the speaker will fit the inner diameter of your hilt, or that it fits in your chassis. Next up, the battery. A lightsaber from Star Wars Galaxy's Edge uses AAA batteries. A Force FX lightsaber uses AA batteries, and other cheaper toy lightsabers that you might find at Walmart or on Amazon or whatever will also use standard batteries that you can find anywhere. Everything else uses lithium-ion batteries, or Li-ion for short. Not to be confused with just plain lithium. Lithium batteries are just one and done. You use them up, you get rid of them. Lithium-ion batteries are rechargeable. Honestly, guys, batteries are just an entire thing. I can't possibly cover everything about them in this video. I really shouldn't, because lithium-ion batteries are actually extremely dangerous. There's chemicals inside of them that if you puncture the casing and they leak out, they'll just burn whatever they fall on. Please do your own research regarding safety, proper handling of lithium-ion batteries, because that's a serious thing. Be careful. I do think there are a few important things that I can talk about with regards to shopping. Let's go to the customsabershop.com real quick. They've got several options for lithium-ion batteries to install in lightsabers. The way these batteries are differentiated are first by brand. So here we've got Trustfire, Panasonic, Sony. It might tell you whether or not it's a protected circuit board, which is very important. Sometimes it might give you an amperage, like for these Sony batteries. And lastly, you'll see a value for milliamps per hour. That's basically a measure of how much battery it can store. All of the voltages are either going to be 3.7 volts or 7.4 volts. Look at the documentation for your soundboard or lightsaber and look for where it says what voltage battery to use for it, because certain voltages work better for certain soundboards. And lastly, let's talk about these 5 numbers right here. This one, for example, is an 18650. That has nothing to do with power or capacity or anything. This is purely a measure of the size of the battery. First 2 numbers will give you the width. So this is 18 millimeters wide. The next 2 numbers are the length. So this is 65 millimeters long. And the last number is the shape of the battery cell. In this case, a 0 represents a cylinder battery. But the reason that's important is because you have to make sure the battery will fit the inside of your lightsaber or your chassis. So take some measurements of your lightsaber or chassis before you purchase the battery. And lastly, let's talk about the chassis. This is usually a very lightweight plastic, often 3D printed skeleton for the inner components of your lightsaber. And it's more than just keeping all the pieces nice and tidy and together. These actually solve a few problems. Number 1 are short circuits. If you have a bunch of random loose components dangling around in your lightsaber, like I have here, you run the risk of some of your solder joints making contact with the interior metal walls of your lightsaber. And if that happens, you can short circuit something. So a chassis holds everything in place, non-conductive, very low risk of short circuits. The other problem that it solves is reaching certain components when you need them. This chassis, which I found on shapeways.com, which was made specifically for this lightsaber, was designed so that the soundboard can fit inside of it face up. And there's even a little spot for the SD card to slide in and out of. Same thing with the speaker. It's got a nice convenient spot for the speaker to prevent it from dangling and rattling around in your lightsaber. So those are all of the basic components that you'll typically find in a lightsaber. Aside from those, there are some other optional items that you can add. You can add a Bluetooth module. That way you can control your lightsaber's lighting and sound effects wirelessly from your computer or even your phone. You can add a recharge port. That way, whenever your battery dies, instead of having to take it out and replace it with a new one, you can just plug in a cable. And then you can add accent LEDs, which are extra LEDs separate from your lightsaber blade LEDs, and even crystal chambers, which can be concealed or left exposed for that ultra super dopeness. That is all I can think of. Hey, I'll see you later. In the meantime, you will subscribe to this YouTube channel. We'll keep on living Star Wars. And how about the new setup? Am I right? Nano leaf, amazing. I got a neon sign now. And light tubes. Okay, time to end the video.